What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another UFC breakdown and predictions video. This time it's a little bit different. We are going to be breaking down Dana White's Contender series, and if you guys are unfamiliar with what that is, for 10 weeks during the summer, or typically halfway through the summer, Dana White hosts a show where five fights will go down every Tuesday for 10 weeks. And these fighters are pitted against each other to fight for a UFC contract. And this typically happens on Tuesday evenings. So August 13th will be episode 1 of season 8. So I'm going to be breaking down the fights and making my predictions. Now, this is my third season where I'm breaking down and researching these up-and-coming fighters. And what I've noticed, it is typically more difficult to predict these specific fights. And the reason being is this is probably the toughest fight for every fighter in this part of their career, and it is a lot of pressure. They're going into the Apex in front of Dana White and fighting for their future and whether or not they're going to get into the UFC. So as good as they can be, as high as their skill level is, sometimes the pressure makes specific fighters crumble, and I've learned that it doesn't matter how big of a favorite they are, they may not be able to withstand that pressure, and they end up losing or choking when they get into the octagon. So there's a lot of external factors when we break down these fights. I'm hoping that we can get a good prediction rate this year, maybe make a little bit of money off of the Contender series. So without further ado, let's get into the very first fight of the night. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and comment down below on your thoughts on Episode 1. First up, we got some people call him Lonnie Kavanagh, so I'm just going to call him Lonnie. Lonnie Kavanagh up against Antoine Ho in the flyweight division. Now, on the Antoine Ho side, he's an aggressor. He has a lot of pressure on the feet, and he loves low kicks. He chops at his opponent's legs a lot and effectively. He's explosive, and he's got real power for a 125er. He also trains and spars with Sean O'Malley, so you know that's going to be good for his development. I believe he's like 23 years old, so I think he's going to have a future in the UFC. I don't necessarily think it's going to be this opportunity that gets him there, but you never know. And despite his age, like we were just saying, he has a high fight IQ. He uses feints very well to keep his opponents on their feet. He has great takedown defense. He pushes down on the head when his opponents shoot for them, and he also fights hands when he has his back taken or when he's in clinch scenarios. The con on the Antoine Ho side is he does get tagged with straight shots down the middle. Now, on the Kavanagh side, he's calm, patient, methodical. He also loves low kicks, and he just has powerful kicks in general. He likes to throw kicks to the body, and he does carry power at flyweight just like Antoine Ho does. His striking defense is also on point. He uses movement well to stay out of trouble. And in his previous outing, he dealt with a pressure fighter similar to the style of Antoine Ho. So we know he can deal with that come forward opponent. Now, the con on the Kavanagh side is he will entertain brawling exchanges, which in this particular matchup I say is going to be a bad idea because Ho has a ton of power and can knock out Kavanagh if he lands clean on him. Now, I will be picking Kavanagh to get this done. I think he's going to be the cleaner striker as long as he doesn't entertain those wild in-the-pocket exchanges with Ho. I think he can stay away from the power shot of Antoine Ho, and both of these guys can mix in wrestling. Typically, it's that's more of like Antoine Ho's style, but I believe it's going to cancel. They're going to cancel each other out in that department, and this will be primarily a striking battle, which I think Kavanagh will end up victorious from. Now, both of these guys are UFC ready, in my opinion. Antoine Ho has 6 career professional fights, and I think all of them are in the LFA. Yep, 6-0 in the LFA, and LFA is like the North American plug for UFC fighters outside of the promotion. So that's great experience on his side. And on the side of Kavanagh, he has 5 career fights, I believe, or 4 career fights in the Cage Warriors promotion, which overseas in Europe, that is the plug for UFC fighters as well. There's plenty of awesome fighters from Cage Warriors currently in the UFC. Tom Aspinall, Paddy Pimblett, just to name a few. So both these guys are definitely UFC ready. They're young, 23 and 25, and it's unfortunate that they're pitted against each other because I think both of them can make some noise in the current flyweight division. But I'm going to go with Kavanagh here. Let's move on to the next fight. This one in the featherweight division. And I know these pictures are hilarious. I can't find PNGs of these fighters because they're new. But I promise you, I'm going to work a little harder on next week's visuals. Regardless, you guys get the idea. We got Jose Delgado going up against Ernie Suarez or Juarez. Delgado, from what I saw, his striking looks awesome. He has good pressure, lots of volume. He has fantastic combinations, and he mixes in his punches and kicks extremely well to keep his opponent guessing. He has great top control when he does end up in top position on the mat, but typically he's looking to strike, and he's an absolute dog. In one of his most recent fights, he got dropped in the first round, and he recovered very well and ended up finishing his opponent, I believe, in the third round of that fight. So he's a dog. He has no quit in him, and I like to see that from a fighter. Now, on the Juarez side, he does have sound striking defense, which concerns me in this matchup considering Delgado is primarily a striker, and Juarez has a stalking style. He walks forward, he walks his opponents down, and typically wants to clinch up and find some takedown opportunities up against the fence. Now, if this stays on the feet, I think Delgado can piece up Juarez, but if Juarez can solidify some takedowns, it'll be interesting to see if Delgado can work back to his feet from bottom position. Now, I do believe Delgado has the better cardio in this matchup as well, so the longer it goes, the more it favors him. Now, the thing about Delgado and why I like him so much in this matchup is his size. He's 5'11" with a 73-inch reach at featherweight, which is incredible. So Ernie Juarez is 5'9", so he's only 2 inches shorter, but unfortunately the reach is not available. But we know at featherweight, 5'11", 6 feet is an insane size advantage typically. So I do think Delgado gets this done. I think it remains on the feet for most of the fight, and he just pieces up Juarez with the better cardio as well, like I mentioned. So I'm going with Delgado. Let's move on to the next fight. It is a light heavyweight fight with Bruno Lopes against Michal Sazhiniani, a Georgian fighter. You know, they got those crazy names. Now, Bruno Lopes, if you guys are familiar with Contender Series previous seasons, he'll be familiar to you because he fought Bredson Ribeiro on the Dana White's Contender Series show last season, where he was a huge favorite. He was like a minus 600, minus 700 favorite, something like that. And he was supposed to beat the brakes off of Ribeiro, but Ribeiro shocked everybody, knocked out Lopes in that first round. And that doesn't really look good considering Ribeiro is winless in the UFC now. So on the Lopes side, he does have the talent to be a UFC fighter. He's a great striker. He has incredible timing on those strikes, and his kicks are very powerful. He likes to attack the body with those kicks especially. He is dangerous on the feet, but the problem is he can be stiff at times, which causes him to get hit in those exchanges on the feet. And like I mentioned, in that Ribeiro fight, he looked flat-footed, he kind of looked stiff, and it caused him to get KO'd. Now, we have seen him develop a grappling and wrestling game, which is good to see, especially at these bigger weight classes, because everybody holds such immense power, for a lack of a better word. Now, on the Sazhiniani side, he's a fun striker. He loves to throw spinning kicks and effectively uses low kicks. He likes to chop the tree of his opponents. Now, he'll mix in takedowns in his fights, especially if he feels resistance on the feet. Now, he does throw with 100% intent constantly, but he can throw wild at times, which can put him in danger. Now, I am going to go with Lopes here because even though he has that blemish on his record against Ribeiro, I think he's just as dangerous as Sazhiniani is, and he's just the better overall fighter in this matchup. I'm hoping his chin holds up. I'm hoping he doesn't get wrestled too badly because Sazhiniani has shown that he will mix in those takedowns and do some good damage on the mat. But I think Lopes is just the overall better fighter. I think he'll fend off those takedowns. His timing is impeccable on the feet, so I can see him landing some big shots on Sazhiniani as well. So I'll go with Bruno Lopes to get this done. Let's move on to the I guess, co-main event of the Contender Series. It is Mang Ding going up against Rami Hamed in the welterweight division. Now, Hamed was actually supposed to fight on the Contender Series last season, and it was against Raymond Magomedaliev, and he's the one who fought Mauricio Hufi on the Contender Series, and I'm pretty sure by now you guys are familiar with who Mauricio Hufi is. Regardless, Hamed hasn't fought since December 2022, and that's one of the two glaring reasons why I'm stressed out about picking the Hamed side, because not only has he not fought for a year and a half, he hasn't, this is on extremely short notice for him. So it's going to be interesting. I think Mang Ding was supposed to fight, let me see who he's supposed to fight. He was supposed to fight a guy named Islam Dulatov, which would have been a tougher fight for him. But I still like the Hamed side here, and let me explain why. So Ding is a solid overall fighter. He has solid striking with decent ground game, but he becomes a brawler at times. And from what I've seen on tape, which is very limited sometimes when you look at these regional fighters that are on the Contender Series, that's something I wanted to mention at the beginning of the video, but regardless, we got to it. He's also hittable with shots down the middle, and because of his lack of head movement, I've seen him in his fights get dropped. I've seen him get stunned, and going up against somebody like Hamed, who is probably going to be the more technical striker in this matchup, I think he's going to find himself in some trouble on the feet. Hamed has that wide, bouncy style. He keeps his hands low, but he has good enough movement to stay safe where he doesn't need to always have his guard up. I always like to think it's smarter to just keep your guard up to absorb some of the impact, but regardless, to each their own. Now, he has great technical striking, and with a kick-heavy style. He likes to throw out side kicks. He likes to chop down the tree as well, chop those legs, and he shoots leg attacks to the body and the head as well. Now, I'm worried, like I said, because of the short notice for Hamed, and he hasn't fought in a year and a half, but I'm picking him to win because I just think he's the technically superior striker, and Ding seems to me to be a little bit too hittable on the feet, and Hamed will find that chin with that more technical striking style that he has, and he's shown that he has good enough takedown defense where he can kind of shuck off his opponents with his physicality, where this should become primarily a striking match, where I do actually favor Rami Hamed. So I think even though this is on extremely short notice for him, I think he'll be fighting with more of an urgency because this is his second chance at a UFC contract. He's also 33 years old, so the time is now for him. If he messes this up, he's probably not going to be able to get into the UFC later on. So I do favor the Hamed side. Let's move on to the main event of the evening. Mansour Abdul-Malik going up against Wes Schultz. Now, these two are very similar in their fighting style. Both these guys are going to want to work their opponent up against the fence, put in some work in the clinch, and eventually take their opponents down to the mat. The one thing I will say about the Mansour side is that he seems like the more physically imposing fighter in this matchup, which could pose issues for Schultz early on. I can see Abdul-Malik getting those takedowns early on in the fight as opposed to the Schultz side with his physicality, and I think he also has a collegiate wrestling background, so that's going to come in handy in this matchup. But the thing is, Abdul-Malik has never been out of that first round. He has 5 wins. He's undefeated, but he's finished all of his opponents in the first round. Wes Schultz, on the other hand, does have a unanimous decision win. He does have a loss on his record, and it was to Dylan Budka. That was also a decision fight. He went all 3 rounds, and losing to Budka, because we've seen him in the UFC as well, and he's yet to get a win in the UFC. It doesn't really look good, but I know that Wes Schultz will have the better cardio in this matchup. If Abdul-Malik does end up getting those takedowns, Wes Schultz has a great grappling skill set, and he can threaten submissions if they're on the mat. Now, like I said, Abdul-Malik has never been out of that first round. He's extremely dangerous. He's put away all 5 of his opponents in that first round. So it's going to be interesting to see if it does pass that 5-minute mark, to see how his cardio holds up, how his skill set is in the second and third rounds. But that's why I'm going to favor Wes Schultz in this matchup, because I know he can go the 15 minutes. He's has a similar skill set to Mansour, and even if Mansour does find success early with those takedowns, Wes Schultz has good enough grappling to threaten submissions and maybe even pull off a few sweeps to end up on top position or get back to the feet. So, and maybe working his own takedowns as well. So I'm going to favor the cardio of Schultz. I do understand the danger and the skill set of Abdul-Malik and his physicality that will pose a problem early for Schultz, but I don't think he's going to be able to get Schultz out of there early enough where he can take advantage of that first round finish that he usually finds. I think Schultz weathers that storm and kind of out cardios Abdul-Malik. I don't know if Schultz will find a finish unless it's a submission, but regardless, I am going to pick the Schultz side here. So to backtrack, I'm picking Kavanagh to start the night off, Jose Delgado, Bruno Lopes, Rami Hamed, and Wes Schultz to get it done. Let me know what you guys think of my picks. Let me know what you think of these fighters and each fight individually, and who you're picking in these specific matchups as well. Make sure you hit that like button, comment down below with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I will see you in a few days when I'm breaking down UFC 305. Thank you guys for watching.